Hello everyone and welcome to my studio. This is a dog portrait painting demonstration and other curious things. Let's first start with other curious things. What do we know about dogs? We know that they're descendants of wolves. The first sign of the dogs trace back to 40,000 years ago. We know that dogs had to undergo physiological changes. They no longer had to be predators, hunters, or survivors. Food and shelter were provided for them. One of the most important anatomical changes was that they no longer needed a strong jaw. This led to a smaller brain box, shorter muzzles, more angular noses, and slightly narrow eye placement. Dogs' eyes are set a bit laterally with about 250-degree angle. This gives them a balance between peripheral vision needed for detecting danger and binocular vision for depth perception when they're tracking prey. The next slide illustrates the variations between breeds of dogs, which widely range in size, shape, color, and coat texture. Nothing in the design is accidental. All breeds were created for a specific purpose, from lapdog to hunting to rescue dogs, all in a service to humans. This next slide demonstrates how all dogs are divided into three groups according to skull type. The main differences are the proportions of length and width of the skull and the size and the placement of their eyes. Now, let's take a quick detour to see how dogs were portrayed in the art throughout history. The earliest portrayal of dogs appear in the cave paintings, frescoes, mosaics, pottery decorations. As early as 3000 BC in Egypt, we see dogs symbolically portrayed as guardians and companions in the afterlife. Interestingly, these dogs closely resemble greyhounds. As art developed, its purpose remained as storytelling, a picture book to record, to educate, and to entertain. Dogs were often portrayed alongside people as a symbolic props. Dog portrait as an independent subject matter did not develop until the early 17th century in England and Netherlands. Let's look at how beautifully the story of forbidden love is told in the painting titled Isabella by John Everett Millis. The scene depicts the last dinner before Isabel's brother killed her beloved Lorenza, who is shown here serving her a plate of oranges, symbols of fertility and marriage, which were not meant to be shared between them. Her greyhound rests at her feet, Isabella's hand lovingly placed on his head. Here, the dog symbolizes loyalty, faithfulness, and the love she feels for Lorenza. The outstretched leg of her brother cuts across the space, pointing towards the dog like a weapon, foreshadows violence that will follow. In Jan van Eyck's painting, Arnolfini Portrait, a small lapdog stands at the feet of the bride Constanza as a symbol of loyalty, faithfulness, and vigilance in marital values. This painting is often referred to as a marriage contract, since every detail speaks of obligations and promises between husband and wife in marriage. As in the pair of shoes depicted in the painting, the union is only functional as a pair, not as individuals. Interestingly, the oranges as a symbol of fertility also used in this painting. Next, we see the two genre paintings by the Northern Renaissance master Gerald Terborch. The first, titled Letter, shows a young woman reading a love letter while the guard dog of virtue sleeps comfortably on a velvet chair. In the second painting, the dog is wide awake, but placed in a dark corner, foreshadowing the dubious intentions behind the so-called music lesson. Terborch's mastery shines through his textures: silk, fur, velvet, wood, painted with loving attention to every detail so characteristic of Northern Renaissance. In the next examples, dogs serve as a symbol of social status, aristocracy, and wealth. In Prince Philippe Prosper of Spain with a Dog by Diego Velázquez, painted in 1659, the hunting dog symbolizes domain over nature. In Gustave Molaire's Lost Playmate, we see a dog seated beside the empty bed of a child. It is a powerful story told through the dog's gesture and pose, with the light emphasizing the fragility of life and the finality of death. We as the viewers stand behind the dog, becoming part of the mourning and sharing in its grief and loss. Dogs are no longer just functional, they are humanized in their emotions. But as in ancient theater, tragedy is followed by comedy. In Peter Pender's comic relief painting, a dog salivates over a sausage, a past movie scene where each of us can imagine what happens next. The contrast of the straight extended lines of the dog's body with the curved form of the sausage is both humorous and visually clever. Now, let's talk about composition in dog portraiture. Composition is the arrangements of shapes and spaces in a way that serve the main idea of the painting. It begins with two main considerations: size, scale, and placement, which together creates the balance of empty and filled space. In this slide, you see two very different examples of that balance, empty versus filled space, two extremes. In the painting of the tired dog, the animal is rolled into the bowl, tightly fitted within the frame. The absence of negative space emphasizes his curled position and the intimacy of the space that feels entirely his own. Such placement brings the dog closer to the viewer, as if with an outstretched hand we could almost touch him. In the second painting, the dog is placed far into the distance. We see him alone, sitting on the couch. He is not stretched out along it, but facing the viewer with plenty of space left, either inviting us in or guarding his couch domain. The interpretation is completely up to you. Justin Coburn's depiction of Greyhound and Russian Borzoi emphasizes their aristocratic size by tightly fitting them into the frame, yet the painting never feels cramped. His aesthetic decision to leave some parts of the dogs only barely suggested creates openness in the space and a sense of mystery in the form, as if both animals are dissolving into the very air of the painting. This effect is further enhanced by his limited tonalities and restrained color palette, which make the painting all the more harmonious and beautiful. Benjamin Bjorklund, another great contemporary painter, captures the contrast between stillness and movement. His Basset Hound, forced into the perspective, pulls us deep into the space of the painting, while the color contrast of orange and green pushes us back out. His Great Dane, cut in the mid-air with ears flopping, beautifully displays its anatomy with just a few chiseled brushstrokes. The background is activated with energetic strokes of color, as if applauding the gentle giant for his physical effort. In the next slide, we see the most common form of pet portraits, the head and shoulder composition. These two examples showed a very different approach. Jean Gennare's portrait of a French bulldog focuses entirely on the subject. I especially love her decision to leave the bottom of the canvas raw, which gives the painting a feeling of immediacy. By contrast, Aaron Westenberg's portrait of his beloved Boston Terrier is less about capturing likeness or being a portrait, but more about the act of painting itself, the enjoyment of compositional rhythm, color, and the deliberate placement of a tile-like brushstrokes. In the next slide, Pierre Ponder achieves not only a faithful likeness of his miniature Italian hound, but also a psychological portrait. As a breed, Italian Greyhounds are known for their fragility, their skittish and nervous temperament. The artist makes deliberate use of these traits by placing the dog on a table. The restricted space and the elevation immediately heightens a sense of unease. The arched back, a characteristic posture of the breed, which here becomes a visual cue of tension. The dog turns away from us, refusing direct engagement, as though fearful of facing the viewer. In this slide, I compare two similar compositions. The painting on the left feels somewhat awkward, as if the dog is missing a paw. While the pose is common for the dogs, it may not be the best choice for a painting. The second composition on the right appears more convincing. The extended paw blends into the rug, and the hidden paw is partially visible, which gives a greater sense of completeness. Since we often rely on photography as a reference today, it is important to choose images carefully. What works well in photograph may not necessarily translate into a successful painting. We are conditioned to trust the camera, but we are quick to doubt the painting. The choice of the background is an important compositional decision. Traditionally, the background is treated as a supporting element to the foreground. In the first painting, the gray desaturated background harmonizes with colors of the dog, allowing some edges to remain defined while others dissolve, integrating the figure into the surrounding air and space. The second painting relies on contrast. Light areas are placed behind dark shapes, and the dark areas behind light shapes. Here, the use of red becomes a guiding element, leading the viewer's eyes through the composition. In the third painting, the background provides a strong color contrast to the black dog. However, with its abundance of patterns and designs, it creates a visually busy space that competes with the subject. As a result, it diminishes the focus on the dog and offers no resting place for the viewer's eye. And finally, I'd like to bring us full circle. In early times, dogs were painted as a symbolic props, included alongside people to help tell their stories. In contrast, in this series of works by Francois Barthes, the contemporary French painter, the roles are reversed. Here, people become the props, serving the narrative of the dogs and their relationships with their humans. Barthes offers only the subtle clues about the people through what they wear, their stance, and their positioning relative to the dogs. The rest he leaves to our imagination. In this way, we as viewers become co-writers of his stories. The painting acts as a mirror, reflecting back the workings of our own minds and the depth of our imagination. They are far more than the simple portraits of dogs. They are exploration of relationship, identity, and storytelling. Thank you so much for your attention. On my Patreon page and my YouTube channel, You'll find several videos that explore topics such as composition, edges, and painting and sculpting, discussed in much broader sense than just a pet portraiture. Thank you for joining me in this journey into the exploration of dog portraiture. Please enjoy the second part of my painting demonstration. Thank you so much. Till the next time.